Welcome to Raising the Bar podcast,
sponsored by the Ashmore Law Firm.
We're your hosts and siblings,
Gary Ashmore
and Lori Ashmore Peters.
Subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.
First off, thank you guys, everyone, for being here. This is a very, very special podcast. I know this is different for you guys. Thank you. I wanted to make sure I got that on camera. I'm very blessed to know you guys. You guys brought in our charity, Operation Rock the Troops. And I don't know how we bonded, but we bonded way quickly. But thank you for bringing everyone together in your beautiful home in this office place. This is amazing. So thank you. Give it up for them for having us all here. Thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you for including us.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, it's an honor.
You're the
and
ones that are
privilege.
raising the bar. No pun intended, but like literally raising the bar in this community. But I'm going to let you guys take it over. When you guys are ready, you guys start it off. We'll start off this beautiful moment. Thank you guys again for being here.
All right, so I'd like to welcome all of y'all to our Raising the Bar Texas podcast, sponsored by the Ashmore Law Firm. I am one of your co-hosts, Gary Ashmore, along with my sibling, Lori Ashmore Peters. And go ahead.
We're taking it away first, and thank you all again for being here. Like, Matthew said, this is our very first live podcast.
Yep.
We are filming live. It's definitely different for us, but we are incredibly excited and even more excited with the company that we get to present you guys with. So what I'm going to do is starting with you, Joshua.
Yes.
We're going to have each of you introduce yourselves, please.
Absolutely. My name is Joshua Olson. I'm a helicopter pilot and a musician. I'm also L.A. Olson's son. He wrote the book that we're kind of talking about. Are you with me? So up to you.
My name is L.A. Olson. I was a helicopter pilot in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. I flew a little over 800 combat missions, wrote the book, Are You With Me? And that's what we're going to talk about at least a little bit today.
I'm Matthew J.C. I am a director. I make a ton of veteran documentaries, at least 8. I've been humbled to win 3 Emmys for our documentary movies. And I met them, even though I've known Josh since 2003, I met this hero right here, and I had to be a part of this project. That's why I'm here.
I'm Kerry Graves. I'm one of the producers and the writer for the series, and I'm Josh's bass player. So that's how I met L.A. And once I read the book, I went, this has got to be a series and a documentary.
And I am Glenn Morshower. I am producer, director, and narrator of the documentary. I was born and raised here in Dallas and have the distinction of having appeared in more military roles than anyone in the history of film, living or dead. True story. So I'm honored to be here. And after 36 years of living in Los Angeles, my wife and I both came back home to Dallas, and we love being back home. We've been here for 12 years now, so I love that.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Welcome back is right, and very nice. So, LA, we are here for you and because of you.
Well, thank you.
And so I thank you for that. I thank you for being here. And so the book,
The book.
hold up the book. This incredible book. So if you can just tell us a little bit, why did you write the book and how did you come up with the name?
Okay, man. When I came back from Vietnam, very strange. Nobody seemed to care about Vietnam. They didn't want to hear about it, the civilians. I was very, very fortunate that I still had a couple, 2 years left in my initial enlistment in the Marine Corps. And I was ordered to become a tactical combat instructor in Jacksonville, North Carolina, New River, Camp Lejeune. I was so fortunate because I didn't have to come back from Vietnam. I had a chance to decompress on a Marine base with Marines. People told me, we don't want to hear about Vietnam. Well, I didn't know them. The Marines that I trained after Vietnam, we talked about combat, how to survive, the whole 9 yards. I was able to decompress. But when I talked to civilians, they all told me, We don't want to hear about it. And I thought, I sure as hell don't want to even talk to you people. Then people said, you know, the Vietnam veterans that come back are jaded. There's something wrong with them. Every TV show that, or most TV shows that you would see, there was always a Vietnam veteran. That Vietnam veteran would take hostages in Central Park. He was going to kill kangaroos in the zoo. He was demented, took hostages, always a Vietnam veteran. I thought, this is not the people I served with. The men I served with in the United States Marine Corps were the finest men I've ever known, physically, mentally. You don't become a pilot in the United States Marine Corps if there's something wrong with you. Everybody talked about this crazy Vietnam veterans. These guys are not crazy. I wrote a book, and I wanted to tell a story about Americans. American men that are physically and mentally tough. They go to a faraway place. It's stressful. You're going to get killed. You're going to kill people. They're going to try to kill you. It's tense. It's stressful. It's not pleasant. It's dirty. It's bloody. But you know what Americans do? Sometimes they laugh. They cut up. I was in the Marine Corps. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking I was in the Army. The Army are soldiers. Marines, people in the Marine Corps are Marines. I've often thought, if I ever have to go to war again, I want to fight the U.S. Army. They were the most aggravating people in the world. But
All right. It's on us, Sir Dad.
as we went to Vietnam, we stole Army Jeeps. We screwed with the Army. Every chance we stole stuff from the Army. If we didn't have something, we'd go to the Army base and steal it. I wanted to tell the story of American men under stress that coped with that stress. They fought. They were decent, strong men, and they served their country well. I was proud. I still am proud to be a United States Marine. You got to remember one thing about the Marine Corps. Once a Marine, always a Marine. It never leaves you. And that's a good thing. Because you know what the Marine Corps stands for? God, country, and Corps. You love and respect God, self-explanatory. Country, that includes your family, your friends, your government, and the Marine Corps, the honor and tradition of standing up as the tip of the spear to fight for your country and die for your country if necessary. Now, the reason I named the book, Are You With Me? In Vietnam, we flew in flights of 4. 2 working birds, 2 gunbirds. 4 of us would fly into a zone. Let's say we're going to pick up a medevac, somebody that's been wounded. Lead bird, lead helicopter is going to fly in. He's going to land. The chase helicopter is going to fly around watching at all times what he's doing. If he takes fire, if the enemy shoots at him, incapacitates him, kills him, chase bird is going to fly into that zone and pick everybody up. The wounded, the recon extract, the crew of the helicopter, because in the Marine Corps, we do not leave dead and wounded. That chase bird is going to come in and rescue us, snatch us from the jaws of death, and bring us out. The gunbirds are going to fly in a racetrack pattern over the landing zone. If we take fire, these guys are going to put it on their ass. They're going to hit them with rockets, going to hit them with machine guns. They're going to protect us. So when I fly into a zone, the very first thing I do, I've got it, they pop the smoke, I'm headed inbound, I say, are you with me? And the other flight will respond either by clicking the mic one time or saying, Roger, we're with you. Meaning they're in position. If something happens to me, my crew, now remember, in my helicopter, I've got another pilot, a crew chief, and 2 gunners. We have 50 caliber machine guns on the side. So we've got a crew of 5. I'm responsible for these people. We're going in. I say, are you with me? They respond. Click, meaning yes, or that's affirmative, we're with you. Meaning, go in, land. If they say negative, I've got to stall around, make ass turns, whatever, until they get in position, because I want them to be with me. I want them in position. That's what the name of the book was about. Are you with me? In the book, from time to time, I had a crew that died. As they crashed, they knew they were going to die. They called up on the radio, and they said to me, Chatterbox 27, which is my call sign, Chatterbox. What a stupid call sign. That's the Marine Corps for you. Why didn't they call me Tough Guy? Tough Guy 27. Instead, our call sign was Chatterbox. They said, Chatterbox 27, we're going in, we're not going to make it. They'll see you in another place. I wish I was with you. Anyway, that's why I named the book. I called the book, Are You With Me?
I need tissue. My God.
Hey, you have some of that.
Oh my God. Josh, growing up, what did you think when you knew your dad was going to be writing this book?
It's interesting. He always told me stories ever since I was small. He would tell us these fantastical stories of these places that were exotic, and then he didn't really touch on the violence as much, but we grew up with these characters and these people. And when he initially he wrote the book and I read it, and it opened my eyes to a world that I really had no concept of. I had no basis for it because people didn't talk about it. I didn't understand it. So I started to learn maybe a little bit more about my father, but more about his experience. And initially, I wrote a play about a veteran coming home from Vietnam and the things that he experienced. And Carrie and I were brand new in our music endeavors that we were doing. But I called him up and I said, Carrie, look, I wrote this play. What do you think? You want to do a play? Let's do something. He read it. He said, we need to talk to Matthew J.C. I said, oh, I've known Matthew for almost 25 years. Let's give him a call. Calls him up. We go to a restaurant. We sit there. We talk. He goes, play? That's cool. We could do that later. But I think we need to do a documentary, and we need to, really delve into this thing and really start to talk about it and let other veterans and people from the Vietnam War talk about it. Nobody's really had a chance to talk about it. But nobody's given them a venue. I said, well, okay. And then these guys, Matthew, take it up. It evolved into this thing. And
See, when you talked to me, it was, you had this play. I didn't even know your dad had a book.
Right.
So the first thing that I did when I met you and him at that restaurant in Addison was, well, I'm going to buy this book. And I started reading this book. So I remember when I came to that dinner, I knew at that time I've already filmed at least 8 veteran films. And at the time I've now taken, I guess I could say this, I've taken 22 World War II veterans back overseas to where they liberated in Europe. I don't know many directors or filmmakers that have done specifically that kind of storyline, that I started to see what it was like to take, at the time, World War II, as they called it, the greatest generation. How do you take these men back to where they liberated and tell their stories? Is it different? You just can't turn a camera on. You can't write a script about these men that are at this time for the World War II, 96 years old to 101. I can't just put a camera in their face and be like, go, tell me something, Tom. Tell me something. You had, how do you do all of that? But when you showed me your play, and we talked with Carrie, who's been in, I know you've been in, I don't know how many movies or how many productions, You've done a lot, but I remember saying to you humbly, I don't think you have a play. I think you have a documentary. And then when I started to read the book, I was like, this book. So when we did, I'll back up and say this. Of the 3 films that I filmed overseas in Europe, I always thought it was going to be a TV series. But they did Band of Brothers. But no one has ever done Vietnam like a Band of Brothers. Why is it that our government, why is it that all of the propaganda will not talk about Vietnam? I mean, I think we all know. We don't want to talk about our mistakes.
We haven't Hinckley. I mean, we can get into that. You know what I mean? Like, why the documentary? We'll get into that. You'll see some of.
Let's talk about that.
You know,
I mean, what you're talking about Vietnam.
Landon he's an expert in this. One of
Talk to him in a second.
And he's he is an expert in that propaganda, and he kind of has.
It was the first war, and I think he knows this too. It is the first war that was ever televised for the rest of the world to see what was happening in war. In World War II, there were no cameras. No one was seeing, oh, we just bombed Bastogne in Belgium. No one saw that. But in Vietnam, what did they do? They started showing things that were wrong because politics started to ruin the war. We knew this.
Every night, Walter Cronkite on the news telling you how many people
and where's someone like LA? LA's over there thinking, look at me. I'm fighting for our country. I am being this man, this woman, because there were many that went over there to do this that felt like we were doing what we thought was the next regime after Hitler. Oh my God, but they were drafted, a lot of them. And we all know if you were drafted, right? What happened if you were drafted? You were usually sent to the front of the line.
Here's what happened. Here's the unfortunate thing about Vietnam. I was never drafted. I was going to law school, not particularly happy, didn't like it, dropped out of law school, joined the Marine Corps. I'm so fortunate because guess what? Marine Corps, my enlistment was for 5.5 to 6 years, depending on how long it took me to get through flight school, which was 16, 18 months. That's not the problem with Vietnam. I went to Vietnam, I spent my time, I did my job, and I was good at it. I was shot down a number of times. People said, you must have been a hell of a pilot. I said, I must have been a shitty pilot. Getting shot down 8 times is not a measure of success. But I survived. What about the kid that went in the Army? He was drafted. Now, see, not particularly happy with the Army. But in the Army, you're drafted for maybe 2 years, maybe 3. You go through training for a year and a half. Then you deploy and you do this and you fool around. You go to Vietnam. Your enlistment's for a year or 13 months. When you come out of Vietnam, you're 19 years old, maybe 20. You've been drafted. You come out of Vietnam, they fly you back to the States. Maybe you only have 2 months left in your enlistment. Your 2 years or your 3 years is up. The Army says, oh, let's get rid of that guy. Ripped him. We don't need him. He spent his time in hell. He was in Vietnam. He did his job. Cut him loose. Send him home. We're going to do him a favor. That's no favor. Look at me. I went to a Marine Corps base. Structure. Marine Corps. Buddies of mine that have been in Vietnam, those that survived, and guys that are going to Vietnam. I had a purpose. I was surrounded with structure, the Marine Corps. What about this goddamn Army kid? He comes back from Vietnam. He has set an ambush at one night with his buddies. These guys are closer to him than his brothers. They live and die together. They live in the mud together. He's setting an ambush. They take him out of the ambush. They bring him back to a rear area. I pick him up, take him over to Freedom Hill. He takes a shower, packs his bags, gets on a Freedom Bird. He's gone back to the States. He lands at San Francisco International. He goes to an Army base. They pat him on the shoulder, say, "What a good job you did," kick him in the ass, give him a plane ticket, and he's home. 4 days after he's setting an ambush, he's home sitting at his mother's table. He's a kid. He was killed or be killed. Now he's sitting at his mother's table. And you know what she says? "I saw little Betty Boob. You dated her in high school. Maybe you kids will get back together again." What? His dad said, "I just came back from the plant. They're going to hire next week. You need to go on down and talk to the foreman, see if you can get on." That kid is sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? Then his buddies that never went in the service, they had a sore toe or whatever, they got out of the draft. They call him up and say, "Hey, buddy, I heard you just got back. We're going to come over and pick you up." They pick him up. They go to the A&W root beer stand. The kid is sitting there with these guys. He didn't even know him anymore. And they said, "You know what? A lot of bad shit's been happening, man. McDonald's just went up another 10 cents on their double cheeseburger. What do you think about that?" This kid is sitting there thinking, my buddies are on an ambush tonight. I hope to hell they'd live through it. And his friends are worried about McDonald's going up 10 cents off a goddamn cheeseburger. Okay, so you got problems with Vietnam veterans? Sure. Whose fault is that? That kid? It's not his fault. And I'm going to tell you, you don't have a problem with me. I'm not going to bomb any buildings. Well, probably not.
See, but this brings up a good point, though. Do you know what happened between you, me, and Carrie? If you remember, this is where we came up with the title of a documentary, is that you have all of this Vietnam veterans that all wanted to do one thing when they came home, and that was find peace. But we had a world that, if I can be bold, propaganda, the news, the way that they taught people to understand the war then was to hate it and hate you. And you were drafted, many of you, right, over there to do all of this stuff. You guys came home and you had no idea what you were coming home to. So we had this idea of putting out a documentary about you called Finding Peace. I mean, what a simple concept, finding peace. What does that even mean? Why does even the military, who chooses sometimes to go over there, be drafted to find peace? But it was something that you deserved. And we know all the stories. I mean, we've all watched Rambo. We all know what happened to him in his movie. For the love of God, he just showed up and he just wanted to hang out in a damn small town. That didn't work out well for him, did it? Could you imagine that that was an LA Hollywood production of what happened? We knew it was glorified, but it happened to everybody that was coming home, whether it was in Ohio, whether it was in California, whether it was in Connecticut, whether it was anywhere.
And that's a countrywide
Right.
thing that, like you said, it's something that we never really saw before with the World War II guys. The society changed then. Things became different. Whether it be propaganda or whatever it was, the televising of the actual war. Hearts and minds, I don't think really were one here. And you get like LA comes back and people come up and spit in his face and they scream obscenity at you and they throw things at you and these things happen. Unprecedented. We never saw that before.
Right. Because you were over there thinking, I'm protecting who's at home over this evil that we were presented with.
Exactly. Of course.
I'm guessing that the life expectancy of someone who spit in your face would be limited. And if I may, I want to piggyback on something you were saying, because I have shared this with actors for years. We all know the term PTSD. I'd like to introduce another term tonight called the emotional bends. We all know the bends, those of you who've ever been deep sea diving, and we are taught that you cannot just come up quickly, which is what you're talking about.
Right.
Right? That's what that is. Anytime you've gone to a deep place where things are very different than the way they are on the surface, then when we come back, if we are to survive that ascension, that has to be done incrementally and carefully. Otherwise, we cannot relate when we get back. It's so tragic and so true, L.A.
Well, one quick story.
Hold on. Do you know what quick story means?
No.
No. Do we have a lot of film?
And I love you more than anything.
Okay, wait, hold on. We want to hear the quick story, but I want to take a quick break because we want to show the trailer.
Well, I'll say this. I'll lead into this real quick, if you don't mind. We have a couple more seconds. Okay, I'll say this. When Joshua and Carrie and I talked about this and doing a documentary, we ended up, what was the name of the place? Do you remember?
The National Vietnam
War Museum. The National Vietnam, where was it located? Midlothian. They actually have, I didn't even know this amazing Vietnam museum. And it was glorious. And we called them up. Carrie told me about this place. And I was like, I'll just call them up. And like, can we film here? And we filmed an amazing teaser trailer about his story. Now, I didn't know, and I've got my buddy Gus over here, and we filmed God knows how many dang movies. We're like, let's just turn the cameras on and see what would happen to see what we could generate, because we knew we wanted to take him back to Vietnam to find peace. And the only way to find peace is to go back to the exact place that had happened for you to confront it, because we know that when you heal, you speak up. You wrote a book. You started to heal. Because no one was letting you tell your stories, or at the end of the day, you weren't telling your stories.
Right.
So you ended up writing a book to be like, all right, F it, I'm not telling my damn stories right now for the rest of the world to know. So why not tell a documentary? So you guys are getting to see the teaser trailer for what we're about to do. And we'll say, is that a good way of transitioning now into it?
And is it about 3 minutes? 3 or 4 minutes?
It's about 3.5.
4.5?
I don't know. Yeah.
It's 4:27.
Whatever he says. And this is why he's the producer, because I don't know the exacts. I'm just the guy. But I think we should go ahead and play the trailer right now for Finding Peace.
The lead girl came up to me and she said, "Did you just get back from Vietnam?" And I said, "Yes, I just did." She spit in my face.
The war in Vietnam is not like these other wars, yet finally, war is always the same.
I am L.A. Olson. I was a first lieutenant, United States Marine Corps, a helicopter pilot in Vietnam.
My name's Joshua Olson. I am L.A. Olson's son.
Why did I write the book, Are You With Me? Why am I sitting here right now with my son, willing to tell my story? People misunderstood about Vietnam, or they didn't care. Either way, it was an important part of my life that I want to share with my family, and I wanted to share with people in America. It was tragic, but American men handle things differently than other people in the world. We went to war, we served our country, but while we were there, sometimes we laughed. Everything in Vietnam was not death, destruction, and blood. There were moments, the camaraderie, the friendships that were developed that were important.
The first time my dad told me stories of Vietnam, I was 8 or 9 years old. And there were these exotic, wild stories from this faraway place that were so full of adventure. Places like Elephant Valley and Monkey Mountain. It impacted me in ways that changed me. I became a helicopter pilot myself due to just listening to these heroic, adventurous stories of things that didn't seem real.
It was hard for me to explain to myself what had happened and why it had happened. But it was important. I wanted him to understand. America didn't understand, but I wanted my family to at least understand how I felt and what we did. Coming back from Vietnam, I wanted to tell the story about some of the struggles I went through personally, and other veterans. We weren't accepted. People didn't want to hear our stories.
I was in World War II, fella, and I served for years. I know what it's about. What a Cuban do it.
I have a son that's going to go into the Army.
A lot of these guys were forced to go to a war that they didn't either agree with or they didn't know about. And when they came home, they had to face another war, and that war was everybody turning their back on them.
There was no planning on their return. That's why society said, you know what? You can't trust these guys. They're crazy. They're killers. How do you deal with that? A lot of the veterans never did deal with it.
Who's paying for the war? We are. We are. That's right. For what? That's right. For what? For what?
People told me, we're not interested in hearing about your experiences. We don't want to know about Vietnam. We don't want to talk about Vietnam. Well, that's all well and good for you. But it's been on my mind. Before I pass, I'd like to have some peace of mind. And I'd like somebody to tell me that it was all right. Thank you for your service. How about that? How about somebody telling me you're a good and faithful servant? Thank you, Maureen. Going back to Vietnam is important, especially going back with my son.
One thing I would really love to do in going back to Vietnam with my dad is for us to both fly in a helicopter.
I think it'll give me a chance to reconcile a lot of the feelings I have. I wonder what it's going to be like to see Vietnam in a time of peace as opposed to the destruction of war. It's time for us to heal, and it's time for all of us to find peace.
So we're here again on Raising the Bar podcast, again sponsored by the Ashmore Law Firm. We're here talking with the amazing L.A. Olson, specifically talking about his book that he wrote, Are You With Me? So we got that. Very important, amazing book. I've started going through it myself. Lori wants to read it afterwards when I'm done with it. So Are You With Me is what we've been talking about. So please go right ahead, back with the story of what you were talking about.
But hold on. I just want to say I have probably watched this trailer at least half a dozen times. And every time I watch it, I just have so many emotions. I mean, I have anger, I have pride, I have just goosebumps, chills. I mean, I can't even begin to fathom or imagine.
What people don't understand about Vietnam, and I want people to understand this, that country was so beautiful.
You had shared with me.
Jungle.
You shared with me last week. It was like Beauty and the Beast. So I'd like for you to share that. I think you were getting into.
Okay, Gary, thank you. The country was so beautiful. The green of the jungle would almost hurt your eyes. You had the beach, the South China Sea. You had the rice paddy lowland. You had the hill country, the jungle, and the mountains. In that country, we used to see tigers roaming, herds of elephants, cobra snakes. But Vietnam was the beauty and the beast. It was the yes and the no, the yin and the yang, the good and the bad. And a good example of that was I was with a friend of mine that died. There are not many of us left. You know, Vietnam veterans are kind of crazy. Don't worry about it. They're not going to be around much longer, except for me. I'll be here a long time.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. A friend of mine and I is from San Antonio, Texas. Big, tall Texan, tough guy. We're flying a visual reconnaissance. We've got Marine ground officers in the back of the helicopter. We're flying over this area that they're going to make an assault. They're going to bring probably 15 helicopters, 20 guys in each helicopter. They're going to hit this area. They're going to sweep through it. They're going to find the enemy, engage the enemy, and kill them. But before that, we're going to do a visual reconnaissance. We're going to fly over so that they can map out the trees here and the rock piles and the ravines and all that stuff. They're in the back of the helicopter. They called me up and said, sir, we got pretty much what we need. Can we get a little bit closer? I don't want to fly lower than 1,200 feet because if you do, small arms fire from the enemy, AK-47s, machine guns, can hit us. Above 1,200 feet, we're fairly safe. But I said, okay, we'll try it. We'll go down. We're flying down. Picture this. There's a large pond almost a lake. There's a small waterfalls that falls out of the lake down into this little stream. There is lush greenery, bushes, flowers on the side of the stream. It's beautiful. That stream flows into a river that flows out to the sea. I'm playing over this. I said to my buddy, I said, my God, this is beautiful. And it was serene, and it was beautiful. And as we flew over this pond, I looked down and I said, what the hell is that? There were bodies of enemy soldiers floating in the water. They'd got caught in an airstrike, artillery strike. They were decomposing, and the bodies were floating around. The beauty and the beast. The most beautiful country with tigers, cobra snakes. I hate snakes. Cobra snakes, elephants, herds of elephants. Beautiful. Wild animals, monkeys, apes. Vietnam was colonized by the French. But before that, let me tell you a quick, do we have time for a quick story?
We do. But you've now given 10 quick stories.
Okay. One
so
quick
that's almost
story.
your whole book.
One
This
quick
is like
story.
a book reading.
Vietnam was forced when a fierce dragon married a beautiful woman. The child that was born was called Vietnam. The Chinese came and tried to steal that child for years. Then the French came, and the French colonized Vietnam. Why? Because of the rubber plantations, the rubber trees, the rubber production, the rice. The French took it over. World War II comes. Who shows up? The Japanese. The Japanese take over Vietnam. What do the French do? They stay in Vietnam under the Japanese and administer the country. They were the administrators of the country even during the war. They collaborated with the Japanese. Okay, what happens? World War II ends. The Viet Minh, Vietnamese army people, came to the United States and said, sometimes I swear, the goddamn French collaborated with the Japanese. Don't let him come back. Harry Truman, President Truman, don't let him come back. Truman said, well, we gotta help them out a little bit. They were allies of ours. I know they collaborated with the Japanese. Yeah. Let the French back in. That was 1945. Until 1954, the Viet Minh, the Vietnamese, fought the French in a battle called Dien Bien Phu. The French were kicked out of the country. Then starts 9 years of civil war. When the French left, the United Nations said, we'll divide that country at the 17th parallel. The North, okay, if you want to be commie, you're commie. We'll call you red. The South is going to be democratic. Corrupt, but democratic. The South was not strong enough, tough enough. They were corrupt. What happens in 64? 63 and 64? 400 Green Berets. Sorry to tell you, they were Army. Green Berets go, and they start as advisors.
It won't stop.
They're advisors to the South Vietnamese. 1964. The Marines, the Marines land at Da Nang, and the escalation starts. In 1973, the Marines move out. The Army moves out, the Air Force, everybody. 59,479 American Marines, Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, Navy people died in that war. And that's what we face today.
You bring up something extremely interesting. When you talk about it like this, you are exactly talking about what the name of the movie is, Finding Peace. Because no one understood what was going on there the way that you just described it. I don't even think the rest of the world has ever heard what you just said so quaintly in that time period about that.
Okay, now I am going to tell a real short story, and it's not funny.
I don't know if you know what short story means.
It's not funny. I have had a hard... I have terrible nightmares. I was captured twice. I escaped because I'm a tough son of a bitch. I have nightmares. I have 2 dogs that sleep by my bed. When I wake up at night, soaked in sweat, if those dogs aren't there, I'll go nuts. I'm alive today because of that woman right there, this son, and my son Jacob. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today. I have a hard time, and I have a good time. Sometimes I can't deal with it. Sometimes I deal with it pretty damn well. My wife, Jane, said to me the other day, the best thing I've ever heard in my life. She said, you do pretty damn well. You adjusted, you've been a good father, and you're a good friend to me. And you've done very well. That meant everything to me, because I don't feel like I'm doing that well. I get flippant. I try to be funny. I say things that aren't funny. It's a defense mechanism. But I'm doing pretty goddamn well.
Damn right you are.
And you know what? Most of my friends are dead. They died in Vietnam. I came home years later. I had met this guy. I had met his wife during training when we went to flight school. He was supposed to be done with his tour in Vietnam. He had 8 days left. He was going to fly to Hawaii to see his wife on R&R. When he came back, he would be free. He wouldn't have to fly again. He was home free. That night, he was in the ready room. I was shot down in a rice paddy with my chase bird. He heard about it, had his flight gear, jumped in a helicopter, came to get us, shot down and killed. He was supposed to be in Hawaii the next day. When the plane left Vietnam to go to Hawaii, we were dropping him off in the morgue. When the plane got there, his wife said, "Where's my husband?" The liaison officer had to say, "I'm sorry, he was killed in Vietnam." Years later, I was in New York City on a business deal because I'm such a big deal. I went to New York City. I was screwing around. Anyway, I get up there. I called her. I knew her. I knew her from flight school. Billy had died, never seeing his small child, little boy that was born. I called her up and I said, "Pat, it's L.A. Olson." She said, "Oh, I remember you. You were Bill's best friend, blah, blah, blah." I said, "Let's get together." She said, "Can you come out to the house?" I got in the cab. I went out to the house. And we talked, had a cup of coffee. She said, "Well, I've adjusted." But she said, I want you to meet little Billy Jr., the little boy." And she called him in. He came running, the scruffiest little shit. Mop of hair, looked just like his dad. Red hair. He came in and she said, "Billy, this is a Captain Olson. He was in the Marine Corps with your daddy in Vietnam." The little kid looked at me, made a salute, and he said, "My daddy died in Vietnam." And I said, "I know he did." And he said, "But he was a very brave man." And I said, "Billy, he was a very brave man. And he served his country well." And that's the end of my story.
There's a reason why he speaks up like this. That is, if I can be bold, every time you tell your story, isn't that Finding Peace?
Yes.
when we talked about this concept about finding peace, the movies that I've made about World War II heroes that are now 100 years old, as Vietnam veterans get into their 80s, we have
Don't
to
remind
tell their story. No, you're young.
Don't remind me.
If I got in a fight, you're with me. You're my choice one, not your son. I choose you.
Oh, yeah, that's a smart.
Yeah, I chose wisely. I'm finding peace by bringing him in with me.
I do carry a gun.
Yeah, I know you do.
Yeah,
And a knife.
Right here, Tom O'Leary. You know what I mean?
Full nail file.
yeah. But when you want to tell stories, when you want to find peace, it's about speaking up and telling a story. This is why we want to make this documentary. This is why we want to bring LA back to Vietnam. Go back to where it happened. Find that peace. Carrie, I know you have thought. What is it that finding peace means to you?
Well, I was 17 when the Vietnam War ended. So I was the first group that didn't have to go. All my cousins went. And when Josh and I hooked up, and then he gave me the script, and I've done a lot of plays, and I went, okay, we could do this as a one act. And I sent it to some industry people in LA, casting directors and other directors I know, and they all went, this needs to be a series and the documentary. All right, now, this, I don't know if this will blow your mind, but it should put a smile on your face. And this is one of the biggest reasons I'm so excited about what we're doing. When Josh and I got together, and I went, okay, let's and I brought in Matthew, because he and I have known each other 20 years, and he has such a history of making documentaries with veterans. But the guys he served with that are still alive, one of them, who my cousin Landon's here, he's with the Marines, and he worked with him in the Pentagon, I believe, and so he hired a private investigator to, when LA put his book out, they all thought he was dead. All right. So he puts his book out. Fred McCorkle hires a private investigator, and they find him. So I got with Landon. We tracked down the 5 other guys that are still around that he served with, that are all over, they're in Oregon, Washington, where. And then we got with the Marine Corps. So the documentary is a 2-part thing. We're going to take LA, and the Marine Corps wants to do, they're going to reunite these 5 guys that served together in Vietnam. They were all Marines, and they haven't seen each other in 56 years. We're going to do a reunion at the Iwo Jima Memorial, and then the 8 and 9 Marine base. And then Josh and I, we've had more meetings about this. We were at this meeting at a bar, and Josh and his wife Stacy went back there, and they were talking about it. And this guy goes, man, I couldn't help but overhear, what you were talking about. I'd like to help. So the senior vice president of American Airlines goes, okay, we're going to help you do. So American Airlines has jumped on board to provide travel for all the veterans to go to, and the Vietnam. And then I got with this group called Neil Tours, that's who we're using to go to Vietnam. And Landon used his connections. So the Marines are sending him over as a liaison so that we had access to more things. So we're going to do a reunion in Washington, D.C. with 5 of the people that L.A. served with. And then...
These are my brothers.
They're my brothers. And they haven't seen each other in 55 years. And when you're my age and all your cousins, my cousins were helicopter pilots in Vietnam and all that. And I saw how they were before they went there, and how they were when they came back, and how they were treated when they came back. And it is time in this country for the Vietnam veterans to get the respect that they earned. And that's what we're doing the documentary about. The series, he gave me a book, his book, and I went, wait a minute. So I sent it to the people in LA. I went, what about a movie? And they went, this is a series. We're going to do a series. So we're going to do a 15-episode series based on the book, and we've already got the first 6 episodes written but that's where this is all going. But the Vietnam veterans need to find people. They're at that point in their lives where, okay, now I want to talk. I'm ready to talk about it. And we're going to give them that format.
And I'd like to shed some light on my involvement. Carrie and I became friends because we go to the same barber.
Jeff Gillette.
Barber. Now the laugh. My brother and I actually, Carrie and I have known each other a very long time, 40 plus years, and went to LA together this same year, both having grown up here in Dallas. My two most enjoyable films to be affiliated with, and I've really had a chance to do it all by the grace of God. And I spent 7 years on the wonderful TV series 24. Many of you may have seen that show. Yep. I lasted longer on that show than anyone other than Kiefer Sutherland on a show that prides itself in killing series regulars. Every week, we used to lick our fingers, grab the script, and go, do I die? Do I die? Do I die? Do I die? So, but in the feature film world, I did a movie in 1988 called 84 Charlie Mopic. I was 29 years old. And it was a story about a 6-man reconnaissance team journeying through the central highlands of Vietnam. The reason this film became so special to me, which is really why I'm here, is because it was made by a Vietnam vet who refused to have the movie turned into a Hollywood spectacle. And a number of the studios wanted it. They wanted to add their own touches. And what he said was, there was no fancy orchestra playing when I watched my brothers die. There was no fancy music track. There was no one there to bring comfort. And so he insisted on doing it himself. He insisted on directing it because he had written it. And we all went to basic training. And we thought, this is getting real here. We'd never pushed it that far. And our tech advisor, Russ Gunny Thurman, informed us day one that he could kick every one of our butts. And if there was anyone in this movie that doubted that for even a minute, let's get that out of the way right now. That was day one. And we're all looking at each other going, this is next level stuff. The other film that I did that operated this same way was a wonderful movie called Black Hawk Down, which cultivated a sensitivity within me about helicopter pilots. And again, an extraordinary film made by Ridley Scott that really set out to de-glamorize war. And it did it. People, when they saw that movie, felt like they had been to war. So that is my interest because I have such an overwhelmingly clear sense that that's the backbone of intention of this piece, is to tell the truth. And I want to close by saying this. You mentioned in the trailer that you long to hear the phrase that you have done well, my good and faithful servant. And I want to tell you, you heard that from your gal.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that you said that to him. So thank you. I'm glad to be a part of this family.
She's been my anchor. She doesn't really like me, but she puts up with me.
You're a Marine.
Yeah. Hoorah!
So, I know we've talked before about what does it take to make a movie. Do you have any questions on how it takes to make a movie?
Tell us.
A lot of questions.
And could we maybe open it up for any questions we have?
Well, but let me ask you, where y'all are right now, where are you with the documentary? What is it that, we can do to help? What is it that anyone out there can do?
So when you talk about a documentary, right, when I first met LA, the first thing I would want to do, whether it's a friend, a director, or whatever you want to call it of a documentary, is I'm not here to talk about money. I'm here to talk about your story. Because if that story is told, I know how many lives it can affect. But then when you look at a documentary, for example, going over to World War II 3 times, I went to Normandy, I went to Bastogne in Belgium with Battle of the Bulge, and then I've also gone to Italy, which was also known in World War II as the Forgotten Front. When you look at Vietnam and when you look at World War II, you have heroes that were perceived in World War II and Vietnam veterans that weren't looked at like that. When you made that movie over there, I held the camera the same exact way I would hold the camera if I was telling a story about cats that wore funny outfits and we were making a movie about cats. But in this essence, when you're telling this story, you have to raise funds the right way. And when you're raising the funds the right way, you're talking about bringing 4 of his brothers that were with him to Washington, D.C. Maybe 1 or 2 of them are going to come to Vietnam. When you look at Vietnam, we have to figure out, we have to work with, and you know out there, we have to work with the Marines out there. We have to figure out, okay, we need to fly over certain areas. Well, we need a visa from Vietnam to make sure that we can film. We got to make sure that we can fly over the same flight pass that you and your son now get to, instead of you doing it at a time of war, get to go with your son. We have to figure out how we're going to raise this money for this. So we figured out that budget. I've done it enough times. They have done it enough times. We're talking about small change, but we need help. And when you're doing something like this, it's not just helping, and I mean this with love, not just one person, but if he tells his story, all of those other Vietnam veterans feel that they can tell their story. Through my charity, I've always talked about speaking up as step 1 of healing. For the love of God, you not only stepped up, spoke up, you ran, you wrote a damn book about it. You didn't just tell someone locally one story. You said, I want to write a book about everything. Because I know, if I can be bold in saying this, the government probably didn't want you to tell the story in the 80s. Right. You would have called their asses out. Let's be right. I know the World War II guys, what did they do when they came back in the 45, 46? What did they say? I ain't telling anything. I'm going back with my wife, and we had the glorious 50s. And no one said shit in the 1950s because everything was hunky-dory right there. That was supposedly the best time period of America. But when you came back in the 70s, y'all were like, nope, But you did what you had to. So we need to raise this money. And it's not a lot of money that you have to raise to put this on. It is not, because the moment that you get this avalanche, this snowball that goes over this cliff's edge, you can figure it out. And the rest just comes down to it. So our next goal is to raise the money. You have, whenever you're making a movie, and I know you guys know this more than anything, we have this budget that gets it going. This budget's really going to be awesome. And this budget, we can bring it in. We already have the hero, that's you. We have the antagonist. We know who that is. That's the propaganda. At the end of the day, we just need to make sure that we can get you over there so that you can find the peace that you deserve.
But it's not just that. And if I may,
of course,
I think conceptually, we're trying to start a movement of acceptance, of acknowledgement, of actual knowledge of really what was going on, and giving a platform and the ability for the other guys to be able to speak about this and to be able to be comfortable speaking about it with people that are receptive to it, that want to hear it, that don't just say, you know what, don't care, shut the fuck up, I don't want to hear you. Right. And that's really a lot of what happened. Right. And that's that disconnect. But I think we've grown as a society, as a people, to say, listen, these aren't forgotten people. These are our fathers, our uncles, sometimes our grandfathers now, as you know. But
that's rude.
I didn't mean that's
rude.
Don't age him. Don't age your dad.
It's true. Just errors, right?
But the fact is, I really wanted to start a movement, and I think we collectively have said, you know, that's a big part of the goal as well. Right. This is not just peace within him or his family, because listen, we grew up with this. This has affected all of us in ways that people that haven't been involved, they don't understand. Right. And I'm not saying it's all negative. It just affected us. It changed you. It made you different. We thought of things differently. You know, hell, I went to flight school and became a helicopter pilot to try to understand and be closer to my father. That means something. But I need other people to be able to say, hey, you know what, man, I couldn't talk about this for 50 years, but at least there's an avenue that maybe I can talk about it now.
It's funny that you bring that up. And Kerry, you just came with me, and you came with me as well. Congresswoman Beth, Back
and 9, yeah.
right here. She just honored all of the Vietnam veterans in a nice ceremony. Not even not even a week ago. A week ago. And the number one thing that LA and I and Carrie, we walked right up to her and we go like this. What if we could take all of these Vietnam veterans right here and we just turned the camera on and we heard their stories? Could you imagine a channel where we could hear the stories we've never heard in the 60s, 70s? No one talked in the 1980s, for the love of God. No.
Too much cocaine.
I'm not saying it was me.
Just saying.
I'm just saying
There was rock and roll music in the 80s.
a lot of you guys were in the 80s. I see the look on your faces.
Don't judge me.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Stop.
But it's
right?
I can tell you when I went over in Europe with World War II and turned the cameras on, when you go to Bastogne, they had more American flags there in Bastogne than I've seen in any state in the U.S. I saw, if anybody knows what nuts, do you remember when one of the generals, they were told, yeah, you know, I see the nodding over there. We were told at one point, they were trying, the Germans were trying to tell us, hey, do you surrender? And our general said simply, you're nuts. No, that's not happening. And they have a whole celebration that happens around December about this because there's no way that we're surrendering. And when you see that, those Belgian locals love the Americans for the fact that they stood their ground against the greatest evil. And you stood your ground and did what you were told in theory by our government to go do this. And then we're not looked at the same when you came home. It's unfair. We have to tell this story. And it's not just your story, it's the story of all of them because it's a collective.
Sure, I understand.
And it's our time to tell this story.
The families involved in that as well. And I mean, L.A. told stories of his co-pilot and his friend, and he unfortunately died a few months ago without us being able to reunite with him. And he had 2 sons, and they know nothing of what their father did and the heroism that he portrayed when he was in battle. And I think it's a shame that they didn't get access to those stories and to his heroism. I know of it. I know of him, maybe even more than his sons did. And I think that's a shame, and I want to bring some light to that. And I think that's part of the mission of what we're trying to do.
This bill has gotten a whole lot bigger. My daughter's father-in-law passed away 2 months ago, and he was a Vietnam veteran.
Yep.
So I went to the funeral. It was right after we had done the trailer.
Yep.
And I went to his funeral, and they were wearing their vests and the veterans were. So they had, this get together in this room after the service. And I said, I'm going to take advantage of this, and I showed them the trailer. And then since then, I've gotten with more Vietnam veterans than I can count. And every man is telling me, it's time. We want to tell our side of the story. And I'm on a mission to make sure that the men who served in that war, and that was, get the respect that they earned by doing their job, and they get to get it off their chest before they take their pilot road.
Let me say something. I want everybody to understand. Vietnam veterans were the ordinary guys that grew up on the farms, the tenements, the cities. They went to college. They had hopes and dreams. The guys that I served with went through extensive training. These are not robots. They're not military. They're American men that coped with stress, death, and destruction the best way they could, with humor, with guts, with perseverance, in the finest tradition of the American spirit. These are not bums. These are American men and women that fought for their country. Now, people say, well, you really weren't fighting for the country. You were fighting for the industrial military. Bullshit. My country sent me to Vietnam. I fought for my buddies. I didn't fight for Lyndon Johnson. I didn't give a shit about Lyndon Johnson. I fought for John Arnold, Tony Simpson. These guys are dead. They died in my arms. They gave their life for this country. Don't ever disrespect them and say, it was a phony war. What were you doing? You shouldn't have been there. What were you thinking? Don't tell me that. I'm still a tough son of a bitch. I won't put up with that. I won't stand for it.
I had to do a lot of research on this. And just to give everybody an idea of what separates this breed from the others, World War I, World War II, Korea. Your average soldier, Marine, whatever, in World War II experienced combat 10 days out of their tour. The Vietnam soldiers, Marines, whatever, 264 days out of a year they were in battle. It's just, the figures are just mind-numbing. And it's, they're still around, so it's just time to give them the respect.
It's time for them to find peace. Tell your story. And that's what we're trying to do. Isn't that raising the bar?
You know what? Yes, that is absolutely raising the bar.
That's tight.
It was.
It was very good.
You're good at what you do.
It's like I've been on this podcast.
It's not bad, is it?
There is nothing bigger than raising the bar than telling the story of our Vietnam veterans. And I know you're leading the mission, and it's not like no one else has written a book, right? But the way that you wrote your book, and I think when people read the book as you have, and you guys have all acknowledged, you lived the stories. You were sitting in the bed. He was telling a story. He hasn't even told you, and I don't want to light a fire because he's going to tell us another short story.
Short story.
And it's okay because I love it. It's my favorite story about Monkey Mountain. And when we're done with this, I'll tell you the story about Monkey Mountain. But you won't believe that he was flying helicopters and there were monkeys throwing rocks at the helicopter. But I'm not wrong, right?
No,
I'm not wrong. This man will tell you stories about tigers, elephants, this book has everything, and it's time we tell his story. Not just in a documentary, but in a TV series. You're talking about a director that has been in, and an actor that's been in more movies than I don't think anybody else has been in, playing a character in military more than anybody.
I was in the Marine Corps for 6 years. He saluted me in his movies more than I did in the 6 years. And people saluted him. I said, holy shit.
Was played well for it.
Yes, you were.
Never forget.
That's not very military.
Let's never forget the fact. But it's been a treat to have Glenn come in and say, look, as his voice is so recognizable
instantaneously,
in so many military films, TV shows, to have him say, you know what, I feel it. I'm going to come in and narrate the documentary was an absolute blessing for us. It lends so much validity and essence to what we're trying to do. But then, like we said, Carrie and I have been writing on this TV series. And Glenn said, I think I'd like to direct it. I said, yes, please. Oh, please. Oh, please. What do I have to do to get it to happen? And I couldn't think of someone better to do it. I couldn't think of anyone better to do it.
When you talk about it, and again, I mean this, and when I first did that podcast with you guys, and you asked me that awesome question at the end of how are you raising the bar? I've never, my first comment was, I didn't raise shit. This man raised the bar. No, you did. And then I meet this team. It doesn't matter how many films that I've filmed, how many veterans that I've done. I've met a team here that wants to raise the bar for people today because everything that you've experienced is currently, in a way, happening today. Your story of yesterday is happening today. You have someone who understands it not just from an acting, but how it's supposed to be visually presented through the camera lens. Someone who knows exactly how to produce a film from start to finish and write dialogue. The son that was there that heard the stories about everything he went through. The man that went through it. The wife that has heard the stories more than any of us combined will ever hear it.
That's true.
and a podcast that's now talking about you.
Okay, let me tell you about the wife. I've told these stories, and I tell people these stories, and it's cathartic to me. And for a long time, I couldn't talk about it, but then I could. And I'll start to tell the story, and she'll say, I heard that. So what we've done is I name my stories, and I'll be sitting having breakfast, and I'll say, number 4. And she'll laugh, ha, ha, ha. And I'll say, number 13. She said, that's not funny. She knows all the stories. Now, I am going to tell one short story.
I don't believe it.
Then this is it.
Just start telling people you're telling them a long story short.
Okay.
Here's a long story short.
During flight school, I was flying fighter planes, regular fixed wing. In the Marine Corps, as a Department of the Navy, you have to land on an aircraft carrier and you have to qualify. So we're in fighter planes. Long story short, we go out over the Gulf of Mexico. I see this. It turns out to be a barge. I think, I can't land on that son of a bitch. Then I look out and I see the USS Lexington. We get in the flight pattern. We land. Take off. We're solos by ourselves in the plane. We qualify 5 times. My last landing on the aircraft carrier, everybody's standing out here in the crowd. The crew. They're cheering. I think, those idiots didn't think I could make it. The truth is, when I landed that 5th time, it set the world's record for, not me, for the aircraft carrier. It set the world's record for aircraft carrier landings on the USS Lexington. Great. I'm flying off, and they said, who was flight, blah, blah. So that was First Lieutenant L.A. Olson. I thought, holy shit, now what? We get back, and the instructor told me, he said, you set the record. They're going to make a big deal out of it. So they gave me a plaque. Long story short, they gave me a cigarette lighter. I used to smoke. I wish I still did. Anyway, on the back of the lighter.
The president.
Yeah.
Me.
Anyway, anybody got a cigar? Anyway, if you got them. No. On the back of the lighter, it said, front of the lighter, USS Lexington. Picture, etched. On the back, it said, on this date, Lieutenant L.A. Olson set the world's record, blah, 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 aircraft carrier landings. I was so proud of that. I go to Vietnam. I'm a smoker. I'm smoking. I've got that lighter. All my buddies see it, say, oh, you're so cool. Anyway, I'm flying. Guess what? Get shot down. They kill my crew. I end up in the shrubbery, in a big bush. I've got a head wound. I bled a lot. I'm unconscious. They blew us up. As we're coming in, at about 50 feet, they hit us with RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades like a bazooka. Blew us up, killed my crew. Injured me. I'm in a bush, laying there bleeding. The enemy, dirty little shits, came through and stole everything from my body. They took my boots. They even took my socks. They took my lighter, my pistols, my fighting knife, my sunglasses, stripped my body. They took that lighter. Okay. I told everybody, I said, I'm sick about that, God damn it. Anyway, I'm talking to my brother years later. I said, you know what? There's probably some enemy soldier sitting in a bar in Hanoi, and he takes this lighter out and he puts it on the bar. And he looks at his little shitty buddies, enemy, and says, ha, 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 ha. I saw this big, ugly, stupid Marine, ugly guy, oh, big. I fought him. I kicked him. I threw him down, choked him, socked him. Didn't do any of that stuff, but he's telling his buddies he did. And I took this lighter. That makes me so mad. I wake up at night and I think, God, I wish I could find that guy.
And that's the ending of our documentary.
Well, now, here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. I picture in my mind the bones of this dirty, rotten little guy laying in the jungle. He got caught in an airstrike, artillery strike. He's dead. That lighter's rusty, laying amid his bones. That's what I'm hoping. These guys want to do this documentary, Finding Peace. Great. Let's go to Vietnam. Let's go to a bar.
Finding the lighter.
Let's go to a bar, and we're sitting there having what's called tiger beer. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, okay. This little guy comes up and says, guy comes up, little guy comes up, and he says, ha, 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 yeah, hi, you want me to light your cigarette? I look, here's my lighter. Okay, Finding Peace. I'll find
He just wants to find this guy.
No. I'm going to find peace. A piece of rebar metal and beat the guy to death and take my lighter back. Finding peace.
It's not about finding peace, is it? I don't know where this just
It
went.
should be called Finding Lighter.
Oh my.
So we're gonna have a talk after this. So a little. Your marine therapy session.
My wife says that every time I talk about anything. She said, we need to have a talk.
Do you want to see event?
All right, so I guess real quick, because I know this has been absolutely amazing. LA, thank you. I mean, this has been phenomenal.
You're a good host and better friend.
So I know that we got to wrap this up. We want to say thank you guys for being on our first live Raising the Bar podcast.
You guys just raised the bar.
Thanks to our sponsor, the Ashmore Law Firm.
We specialize in probate, estate planning, family law, guardianship, personal injury, and civil litigation.
You can find us at ashmorelaw.com.
Or by calling us at 214-559-7202.
Again, that's ashmorelaw.com.
Or calling 214-559-7202.